Welcome everyone to the webinar today. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the products which Sarah shared and how we believe they work well for municipalities, and hopefully I'll be able to share some insights of how we've done that for other organizations as I go through the demo today. I'm going to start with a few slides just to explain where we think some of the key challenges are for municipalities and where we can effectively offer solutions. And of course, there's many challenges, but I'm specifically thinking in the realms of Microsoft 365 here. And I do know that you have a number of different systems, some of those legacy, some of those more modern, and actually connecting those systems, connecting to data, visualizing that data effectively is challenging. Microsoft 365 represents a good opportunity to do that, as it's a platform through SharePoint and Teams that all your employees will have access to. But how can you effectively connect to that data? How can you effectively present that to users in a way that they will understand? Another thing which we see is forms. I know that I have to complete a lot of forms in my personal life, and I think all municipal organizations need to make forms available either internally to team members to create expenses or approval processes or other types of complex forms, or equally dealing with the members of the public to submit forms online and then the supporting workflow processes. Again, Microsoft 365 represents a great place for that data to exist, but the options out of the box are somewhat limited and often rely on coding to build those forms. The third thing which we hear a lot about is information and records management. Municipalities store and capture a lot of data, and so how you can effectively make sure that your data is well maintained, classified correctly, and secured and kept for the right amount of time. Finally, we're all on Microsoft Teams today. Microsoft Teams has very much become part of all organizations' working environment moving forwards. There's a lot of data in Microsoft Teams. It's increasingly becoming disorganized. And so we'll talk about how our solutions help you organize your data better in Microsoft Teams. And that also applies to SharePoint as well. Now, in Sarah's introduction, we talked about several different products which we offer. More broadly, if you look at our offering and our approach, is we're really focused on several key things. Firstly, being able to support all types of organizations deliver sort of functional processes. That can be through forms and workflow, data visualization, documentation. And then we also want to help you manage Microsoft 365 and deal with that sprawl which exists when you end up with many different sites and teams which aren't effectively managed. We deliver products and solutions to meet both of those needs. We do it in a very easy, user-friendly, configurable set of solutions. And we support that product portfolio with an outstanding customer success team. They're there to drive customers in terms of initial adoption, but also ongoing support and making sure that every voice is heard to continue to enhance our products to meet your needs. And that's one of the unique offerings which we provide, is our expertise and our experience to help bring what we've learned from working with other municipalities to others as they continue to adopt our products. So let's look at each of those products in turn. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roughly break this into half. So I'm going to cover the productivity solutions first in 3 slides. I'll then go into a brief demonstration, and then I'll do the same with the governance solutions. So as Sarah explained, our productivity solutions firstly include forms and workflows. We have a range of solutions which allow you to enhance SharePoint forms. SharePoint forms are a great way to capture your data, whether that be a simple asset register, expenses process, simple ticketing process, even feeding and capturing data which is external. One of the challenges is, though, actually delivering that in an experience which is rich and usable to users. And that's where our forms come in. We enhance the native SharePoint list experience, working both in SharePoint and in Microsoft Teams. We can do things like manage data relationships and lookups. So we can do things like cascading or interdependent lookups. We can also build related data sets. So that can be parent and child information, expenses header, expenses lines, order detail, order lines. And we also have our own workflow engine to automate actions and activities to make it easy to either trigger another event based on something happening, sending an email, creating another item in another list, issuing a task to someone, or scheduled activities to trigger activities on a scheduled basis. So ideally for managing all of those current paper form solutions and bringing those into Microsoft 365, whether that be as part of your SharePoint sites, your intranets, or your Microsoft Teams. Secondly, we support you with data visualization tools. These are a fantastic way of presenting information. That can be as part of an intranet. So we've got organization charts, we've got calendars. We can also consolidate data from within multiple SharePoint lists, Excel, external data sources, and present that either in these rich controls like calendar or an org chart, in data tables, or even custom controls to present information in a specific way, such as a project risk register. These are also very easy to customize directly, either in SharePoint or within Teams. You can add filters, conditional formatting, and other styles to your data very quickly and very easily. Finally, our third productivity offering is in terms of documentation. Our CMS natively integrates to SharePoint and Teams. It's a great way of taking documents which might be a large paper policy or in a single Word document and moving that into SharePoint and Teams, making it easy accessible to users across multiple pages with powerful search capability, easy editing directly within the app with rich controls for video, flowcharts, and other options. We also control and offer version control and auditing. So ideal for digitizing or taking processes and procedures out of a single document and making them much more user-friendly and engaging to users. And I know for many municipalities, those sorts of processes are key to how you work. So how we can enable and support you to do that is another element of our productivity solutions. So I said I'd go into a demonstration after the first three, just because it's easier to sort of associate the productivity tools as one offering, and then we can then look at the governance solutions after that. So let me go and have a little look in Teams here. So hopefully everyone can see that okay. I'm in Microsoft Teams here. All of these solutions also work within SharePoint. So I'll switch between SharePoint and Teams just to show you the different experiences. Firstly, let's just take a regular SharePoint list. So I've got one here, it's an events list. So if I go and add items to this list, this is probably something which we're familiar with in terms of how a form looks in SharePoint. Not particularly appealing. In Teams, and the same applies to SharePoint, I've got an employees list. It's a regular Microsoft list. You can see I've got a number of columns enabled here. I can easily go in and fill this form in, but you'll notice the moment I load this form that the appearance will be not necessarily like SharePoint. It feels familiar. I'm still operating within Teams and SharePoint, but that form is presented in a different way. I can come in here and I can complete it across multiple tabs in my form. So I've got control and ability to manage the different layouts of my form. And let's start to complete my form. So I can put different controls and rules as people complete this form. I can put validation, for instance, to check that that someone has a valid email address or a valid telephone number. I can also look up for an external list here. So let me actually show you those lists so you can see how easy it is to do this. So I've actually got two lists in SharePoint here. I've got one for locations, and you can see that they reference an office. And then I've also got another list, which is my master list of offices. And also notice here, I've got one additional office, which is not ticked as active. So in my form, I'm actually only presented with three. So unlike standard experiences, I can put filters around my form. And then when I select one field, it will activate another field. And I can then go and select from that restricted option, so that cascading interdependent fields, which are really easy to configure. And I'll show you a small amount of the configuration as we go through. You'll notice here also I've got a number of fields which I can tick. When I do that, another field is displayed. So dependent on how I interact with the form, I can have different fields presented at different points in the journey of completing my form, as well as requirements to complete the field at certain points in time. You'll have noticed as I moved across to the other tabs, I'm actually displaying multiple rows of related data. Again, this is really simple to do within our form solution, but actually incredibly complex to deliver in a SharePoint environment. So we're linking two lists together here, and I can go in and populate this and enter multiple fields of information here, and even put things like validation on the device. And it's a great way of capturing associated information dependent on my specific needs. And you'll see here that I can remove rows, add rows really simply. We also support attaching multiple files. So typically a list item would only allow for a single file to be attached, but maybe you need people to supply multiple files about an employee or about a process or about an approval request. Again, you can do all of that as part of the forms. And when I save this request, it will be saved into my list just as normal, and I can go and add workflows as part of our form solution there. I'll briefly show you how these are configured, because I'm conscious we've got a lot to cover today. So if I'm in a SharePoint, let me just go and show you the same list. And here we can do some really simple things, like we have a range of different features as part of our form solution. So that includes doing layout of our form, so how our form is built. We can add multiple different tabs to our form, and we can just give our tab a name. And we can then go and add rows and select columns from our lists. We can also select text fields, lines to break up the nature of our form. And also notice here that I've got the option to add conditions. So this is ideal if I want to say, well, actually only show a tab if it meets a certain condition. So for example, only show this tab when the employee number contains a specific value or is not empty, or even only show this tab when the current user is in a specific group. So you can actually only show tabs to specific users. So lots of options to control and manage the presentation of my form. You can also do a number of other options. So we can connect to external data sources for our forms. We can do permissions to hide or show fields at certain points. We can also configure those cascading lookup fields. So do you remember where we selected one office and then it displayed a location? Really simple to do. So if we looked at the location field, we can say, well, actually, I'll start with the office one because that's got some restrictions on it. So we can look at the office list, but I'm only going to display a specific view. So you'll remember when I came in here, that field only didn't present me London. So that is where we can filter certain items out. And then if we want to do one where there's a dependency, we can come in here and say, well, actually, filter by another column in the same list. So filter based on the office, and it will go and look up and filter that appropriately. That's just a couple of highlights, but we have a range of other features to control and manage and restrict those forms. You'll also notice we have workflow capability and the ability to schedule workflows. As I said, we've got a lot to cover today, so I'm going to move on to the next element of my demo, which is data visualization. I'm going to show you a couple of really quick examples. So I'll show you them completed, and then we'll live build one of those together here. So the first one I'm going to show is an organization chart. So that is a chart to show me a company's organization. We'll give that a second to load, otherwise I'll move on to my next demo and come back to that one in a second. Okay, let's have a little look at my calendar. I'll tell you what, let's give Teams a quick refresh because it's running a little bit slowly, and then we'll have another look. Otherwise, I'll show you this through SharePoint while that loads. Oh, there we go. So here's an organization chart inside of my Teams channel. You'll notice I can expand and collapse these, and it will zoom in and zoom out to help me manage that organization chart. This is fantastic because it's connected directly to my data in Entra ID. It can also be connected to data from SharePoint, Excel, or even an external data source. We can combine different data sources together. We can manage different styles and layouts, color coding, even highlight different assistants. If I click on a certain person, I can also see their full profile card. It's a really useful way of visualizing either an individual department's organization or the whole organization in a chart. This could be inside of Teams. It works exactly the same inside of your SharePoint site. So if you want to include that as part of your intranet, you can do exactly the same. I'll show you the second one, which is our calendar. So these are all part of our same data visualization tools, but it's just visualizing and presenting a different control. So here I'm presenting a calendar, tricky to do natively in SharePoint, but this control actually connects to multiple different data sources. So it's displaying data from my own personal calendar and also from a SharePoint list as well. I can focus and hide one of those calendars if I want to. And if I go and have a little look at the settings here, I'll show you that this is actually connected to multiple data sources. So firstly, it's connected to my personal calendar. This is connected to the Graph API. So whenever we're configuring it, we can connect to multiple different data sources. And we actually have some pre-built examples, such as connecting to a user's calendar. I've also got one here connecting to a SharePoint list, the events list I showed you at the beginning. It connects to as a data source. Configuring the data visualization app is really simple. We can come in here and add it directly into Teams. Same principle in SharePoint. So I'm connecting here to the data view plus app in Teams. This is then going to ask me to connect to a data source. And I can come in here and add a new data source. We saw that earlier, but let's say we want to connect to Entra ID. And then I'm going to connect here and I'm going to connect to Graph API. You can see we've got various examples. So I'll use the org chart here. Again, you'll have noticed that we can connect to different pieces of information, SharePoint, Excel as well. We can close this now. Our data source is connected and it's immediately recognized that what that type of data is, and it's presented it in a certain way. It's also giving me a nice filter, so I can go ahead and filter my org chart by a specific department if I wanted to as well. So let's filter that by technology, and then you see my chart has been filtered down. This is the sort of basic interface, allowing you to get a web part or a Teams channel configured really quickly. You can go in and configure more advanced settings by switching to the advanced mode. That lets us firstly configure this control in more ways. So we can say, well, actually, I'd like multiple different levels displayed by default. I can define the layouts. I can define the styles. So let's pick a specific style and it will look a little bit different. I can define all these different options around search and zoom, etc. I can also go and look at our different actual controls. So this is using an org chart control, but as I mentioned, we can support list, table, calendars as well. Let's pick a different style so we can just see what an org chart looks like if it's adopting a different style. Yeah, so we've got a range of different controls available. We can also build up our data visualization with a range of different options here. So we can add conditional formatting, we can add paging, grouping. We can also build up our filters with other options here. So if I wanted to have filters by, let's say, office location, I can do. This supports search, but it also supports me actually just going and looking at available options to run that filter. Let's have a quick look at a conditional formatter. Oh, that one's, so here you can see my filter working if I only wanted to look at a specific location. We can also go in and configure that conditional formatting And again, this is really simple to use. So I can come in here and say, what do I want to format? What am I going to do as part of my formatting? And then I can add different conditions to define how my conditional formatting is going to apply. So that's our data visualization set. We can connect to all types of data sources within Microsoft 365 or external to Microsoft 365, as well as visualize that data in a range of different ways. Finally, as part of our productivity solution, we have our documentation platform, our CMS. That again can run inside of Teams. It can also run separately within and as part of our SharePoint environment as well. So here it is, just running it normally within the browser. While that's loading, I'll just show you my CMS here. So you can see I've got a really nice navigation down the left-hand side here, where I can navigate my different pages made up as part of my CMS. And I can go in and view those. Notice I've got that individual navigation within that page. I can really quickly edit this. I can go in and make some changes to it. Note, I can just do rich text editing here. I've got a full rich text editor here. I've also got different reusable content which I can use, so I can create reusable content. I can insert charts as well, so if I've got a specific chart or Gantt or other thing like that which I want to include as part of that visual, I can do that as well. I can also embed pictures and other text controls, tabular controls as part of what I configure. I can add additional categories here. So let's say I want creating a new page as part of my policies here. So let's say I want to write a page about maternity, and I'll go and do that, and it can ask me to, it would go and add that page. Oh, I think I misclicked there. So let's go and save that, and then I can go here and actually go and create my page there, and then I can start editing that page straight away. Really easy, natively to Teams, much more shareable than tools like OneNote or other solutions which sit outside of SharePoint and Teams. This is part of your natural environment. So there are productivity tools. Hopefully that will demonstrate to you how we can help you digitize your information and visualize your information through forms and documentation, and then through visualization to connect to your different data sources. The second part of our offering from Microsoft 365 helps you get control of your environment. That's in three key areas. Workspace Lifecycle, so that's site and Teams provisioning with approval. So self-service, templates for users to create new sites and teams, but with controls around that process, with the ability to manage multi-stage lifecycle to that as well. We have automated compliance to help you get control of sprawl and risk within your Microsoft environment. We can identify unused teams which haven't been actively used for a period of time, as well as automated action to manage ongoing compliance. So that can be things such as identifying orphan teams, teams without active owners, where you've maybe invited external parties into your environment, but they're no longer active. It can automate removing them. And thirdly, we have audit reporting for administrators and compliance managers to quickly audit the whole of your Microsoft environment and identify risks. We can identify oversharing, where you've got a lot of sharing links, especially with external parties. We can manage orphaned objects, mailboxes, and also help you reduce cost with storage, identifying those sites and teams and workspaces which are using up a lot of your storage. Why is that important to municipalities? Because with all of these growth of SharePoint and Teams, it becomes increasingly challenging to manage those, increasingly costly, the cost of storage, the risk of information being incorrectly shared. So let's have a quick look at a live demonstration of these capabilities. So let me move this one out of the way because I've finished with this demonstration. And let's have a little look here. So I'm going to start off as an end user for this demo. I'm going to start off as Adele. She has access to the Provision Point app, our governance solution. She can access it through the web browser. It's also available directly here in Microsoft Teams. So we see it here on our left-hand navigation inside of Microsoft Teams. She can come in and request a new space to collaborate, and she can do that from a range of different templates which are available to her. Each of those can have different controls. So for example, if I select this one, which is for an external project, you can see here that it's got a certain sensitivity label applied, as well as certain controls around privacy and security. This one's openly shared, so it has different rules to say, for instance, where I want to create something for my department, where it's got different controls around it, for instance, a more strict sensitivity, as well as certain controls around privacy and external sharing. So let's go ahead and request this one for external collaboration. So let's say I'm doing a communication project, and look, these controls are locked down. I can set it as public if I want to, but I can't change the sensitivity. I can't share confidential information if it's going to be external. It will also ask me for capturing additional information. So I can say what department it's for. I maybe need to give it a certain project code. If I go ahead and request this, firstly, I have to accept a policy. I have to accept and acknowledge that external parties will be allowed in. Also, when I go request here, actually, it's telling me I need to have at least 2 owners. If I left the organization, we need someone else to manage that. So I'm going to go ahead and specify Megan as my second owner. These are good examples of the sorts of policies and rules which we can put in place to help you get more control over your environment. You'll also notice here that my request is pending approval. Let's look at how that approval process works. So actually, Megan is my approver. We can see her here, and she's been assigned an approval task within the service. Firstly, she receives an email, and she also receives a task assigned to her here. She can go in and action that. She can review the details, and if she's happy with that, she can choose to either approve or reject it. We can manage approval and authorization processes as part of our request process. It could go to the user's manager, it could go to the security or IT team to approve, or multiple approval steps if something was shared externally. This is the key to the tool. We can put those controls in place. We can also control what gets included in our template. Provision Point's template builder is really simple to use. We can go in and define what's included. That can be certain channels, both standard, private, and shared as part of the template, as well as certain lists. So you see here that I've got some lists for document libraries. We can control how these are labeled with both Microsoft sensitivity labels and Microsoft retention labels to ensure your organization standards are deployed for data security and data retention. We can also control rules around how that is named. So in this case, the project code I asked the user to provide is going to be consistently applied to the name of the team. It helps users easily find and identify those teams. Finally, we can also apply something called a lifecycle policy. This controls a multi-stage expiry process for that team, ensuring that unless an owner chooses to extend that for a longer period of time, it will be archived, either based on a time limit or activity of that team. If I go and have a look inside of Teams now, my team might have created, yes, there it is. Notice the name of that team, and it's also created that team with the different channels which I've defined. We also include a range of policies, both looking at expiry and usage of our teams, as well as other risks. To give you a few examples of the sorts of policies which we can control, we can look at usage. This particular policy looks and identifies any teams which haven't been modified in the last 30 days or accessed in the last 15 days. We can also look at orphaned workspaces, so workspaces with disabled owners, and also oversharing policies. So where, for instance, there are inactive guest users, a guest user who hasn't logged in for 30 days. We can report those, but also take action upon those. Why is this important? Because it takes a long time for administrators to manage this effectively, and also it can result in mistakes if not managed correctly. Data can be shared, private personal data could be shared with someone, which it shouldn't do. Sensitive information could be shared incorrectly externally. We can go and look at those policy runs. I can look at the results of those. So for example, here's an orphaned workspace check. I can go in and see that 4 are compliant, 2 are non-compliant, really quickly be able to export this data, review why one is non-compliant. In this case, Nesta is someone who's left the organization, so we should go ahead and assign a different owner. I could even go and trigger an action to the owners to do that. Finally, from an auditing perspective, as an administrator or as a compliance manager, I can access our audit reports inside of Microsoft Teams. This speeds up my ability to go in and audit our Microsoft environment. So that includes going and looking for risks such as too many sharing links, guest users, sites and teams with too much storage. You'll see the range of reports which we've got available to us here. I can go and look at guest users. I can go and look at guest users within a specific site or team. I can go and look at, which one is, there we go. I can go and look at a specific site or team and say, are there any guest users within that team? In this case, this one doesn't have any. I can look at guest users across my whole environment. I can also go and look at a specific guest user and say, where does this guest user have access to in my environment? It's a personal account. I'm a bit concerned about where it has access. So in this case, it has access to the product launch. I can also run sharing links reports, so that can be sharing links across my whole environment. This is a big risk because people could share a file, administrators or managers don't know about it, and we might want to take action on that, especially where something is shared externally. That report you saw ran in seconds. For someone to go and produce this report manually could take hours or days, so getting quickly on top of those risks. Same principle with storage, orphaned users and orphaned objects, and I can go in and request those reports and see where there are users which have left my organization but still have access, and I might want to tidy that up. So I can go in here and say, well, actually, Wilson, I'm going to go and remove from that specific location. So that's our auditing, provisioning and governance solution, helping you to quickly get control of your Microsoft 365 environment. This has been used by a number of municipal and government organizations around the world to help firstly get control on an unmanaged Microsoft environment, and then also manage it ongoing to ensure that sites and teams are correctly created and disposed of during their life cycle. So we'll wrap up with just a couple of key points, and then if anyone has any questions, we'll go ahead and answer those. So in summary, why do we feel and why do we know our solutions fit well with municipal and government organizations? Firstly, that they're built for SharePoint and Teams. Everything I showed you, I was within a Teams, a SharePoint environment. We know that there's a big adoption of those platforms within these types of organizations. We know that it can be a challenge to manage and control and understand your data and store and capture data correctly, but also manage it correctly. We know that you're often dealing with multiple different systems and processes, and there's a challenge to digitize them and connect them and visualize them effectively. And so we know our data visualization and form solutions can help you. We know that Microsoft 365 can be a challenge. We know it can be hard to keep control of it. We know that IT teams and compliance teams are stretched. And so our governance solutions are there to help make it easier and give you confidence that information is not incorrectly shared. What's that cost? What's that risk of that data being incorrectly shared? And then finally, we have the right experience to help you. We've got team members who have been working with the platform for 15 years. We've got extensive and experienced customer success team. And we've worked with a number of municipal organizations in both North America and in Europe to help them adopt our tools and deliver real world results. And so we've got that experience and expertise to help you. With that, firstly, I wanted to say thank you.